Hi everyone, welcome back to the 5710 podcast, this time with a special guest, Peter St. John from Caruso St. Since its foundation in 1990, they have been pursuing an architecture that is rooted in place. The practice is consciously international in its outlook, with approximately 25 people working from an open studio in a 1930s factory in East London that the practice converted for their own use. In 2010, they also opened a second office in Zurich. The work of the practice has been acknowledged internationally through numerous awards and accolades. Their Newport Street Gallery won numerous awards in 2016, including the Reba Sterling Prize, and was also nominated for the Mies van der Rohe Award in 2017. So welcome to Aberdeen and RGU. You've been to RGU before, haven't you, to do talks?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I used to be an external examiner here.
Oh, so been quite a few times
then. I
then.
knew the head of school, Jonathan Wolfe, at the time.
Oh, yeah. And you've also, have you got a project in Arbroath as well that you're working on?
Yes, we have a very nice project in Arbroath at a place called Hospital Field, which is a kind of arts organisation who provide residencies for artists in this nice arts and crafts building outside Arbroath. And that project is just starting on site, the first phase.
And that's quite... Is Arbroath the furthest north you've ever done a project?
Yes, it's our only project in Scotland, unfortunately.
Is it a sign of things to come that you'll have more, maybe?
Of course, we'd like to do more projects in Scotland. It's not so easy. And of course, there's lots of good architects here already.
And you're that's as proof that your practice is European rather than just kind of London-based in scope, and you've got an office in Zurich and projects in places like Germany and Netherlands. How do you manage the secondary office in Zurich and the project so far afield? Do you take a lot on yourself, or is it through delegation?
Well, these are things that you find out for yourself as you get older and try to make these things work. Mm-hmm. It isn't really a kind of secondary office, our Zurich office. It's another main office.
Okay.
And my partner, Adam Caruso, teaches at the ETH University in Zurich, so he's partially based there. And I suppose as you get older, you learn to manage more projects, kind of workload that you would think when you were a younger architect would be impossible. And you do it by organising your office around meeting to discuss projects together 1 or 2 days a week with the partners and the designers, and you do it by gathering around you talented and interesting young architects who have the energy to do all of these things, and you need to trust them and find a way of working with them, and it's a little bit like teaching. That's sort of how it works.
And you do quite a lot of teaching as well, do you? And writing, is that kind of an often overlooked part of being an architect, maybe, especially the writing part?
Well, it's overlooked in the sense that it's not a common thing, but I think it's a very important thing if you want to do interesting work, is to be able to talk about it and get it out there to people, I suppose. And we started our practice in the early 90s as teachers, part-time teachers. Adam Caruso and myself, we had half-post lectureships at London Metropolitan, and we taught, and the rest of the time we were starting our practice. And so we've always combined the teaching with the practice, and they go together, and a lot of students that we've taught are working in our office.
Okay.
And then maybe they go on to make their own practices. And I suppose the conversations that you have around teaching are part of the research into the kind of work you want to do in your practice. You try and keep the two things close together.
So you think research is a very important part of being an architect then, that maybe other practices don't always delve too much into?
Well, I'm not being critical of
not in a critical way, just
other offices, but I do think thinking about what you want to do and researching to the extent that architects ever do real research is important. So, and I think teaching is the discipline by which architects can do that, because it requires you to organise your thinking and to communicate in the way that perhaps if you're just practice-based, you can't do quite so well.
So with the teaching and the being a director in a busy practice, how do you kind of balance your time? Is it quite easy for you, or is it always, or do they help help each other in a way as well?
I suppose they do help each other, yes. And as you get older, also you get more relaxed about doing more and more things at once.
Yeah.
It's to do with trusting other people, really, and not feeling that you have to do everything yourself. And it's a difficult balance, and often being an architect is very stressful because you have sometimes a lot of responsibilities and a lot of different levels of things to worry about. But as you get more experienced, you start to worry less, you become more confident, you aren't constantly holding everything in your mind, and then you can move from one thing to the other more easily.
Yeah.
But the key is having collaborators, people in your office who you can work with, who are perhaps more than you focusing on one thing.
Yeah. So when you're looking for people that you might someday call collaborators, whether maybe part 1 or part 2 students, what do you look for when you're hiring, either personality-wise or portfolio-wise?
Well, I suppose Adam and I both teach, so often we offer jobs to students that we've taught, and that of course is a privilege because you've spent maybe a year working with the students and the personalities become clear, and it isn't necessarily just about talent, it's about curiosity and energy and attitude. And the nicest students are the people that are willing to take risks and work hard and are nice people to work with. And of course everyone's different, so there's no general rules. I think to me it's about watching, and of course I love it because I love teaching. It's about seeing how students react to the difficult questions you try to ask them.
So I don't know about, well, maybe I do know, but in this university at least, your practice is probably one of the most referenced by tutors but also students in as precedents, and is heavily looked up to. Are you kind of aware of this, and how do you maybe see it?
No, I'm not very aware of that. We are in our own bubble, and I wouldn't know whether what you're saying is true or not. Sometimes we give lectures and lots of people come, and then you get a sense that there's an audience of particularly young architects who think that our work is an interesting direction when maybe there's not so many interesting things around. So I wonder what your question really is. I think, I'm not. I like to. It's nice to be liked, and nice to hear that what you're doing is being listened to, but in the end, that isn't the important thing.
Of course.
The important thing is that you believe in what you're doing. And I'm just saying that because there's lots of people who may not get the attention that our work gets. And the important thing is that you believe in what you're doing and that you do it to the best of your ability, I think. So it's nice to be liked, but it's not. Being liked isn't the really important thing. Okay.
How do you maybe see, we're in kind of times that are changing quite fast, how do you see the future of architecture in the UK and the rest of the world?
Wow. Well, the future of architecture, I have no idea about the future of architecture. I find we work in different countries, and the attitude of different societies to architecture is radically different. And in Britain, we are fairly interested in architecture, although I think as a society, nothing like as interested in the work of the architect as in many continental countries. And I think that's damaging, and I wish our institutions were better at standing up for the importance of architecture, whereas they tend to just concentrate on professional things.
Yeah.
And I think the future is difficult in the sense that contractors and project managers and different kinds of procurements of buildings are becoming more and more prevalent in Britain. The power of contractors and the importance of the architect and the value of architecture is diminishing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real struggle and something you have to fight against.
Okay. We're kind of wrapping up now, so just 2 quick questions that we close off every podcast with. What's your favourite memory or maybe a favourite story that you like to tell from your architectural career, whether from in uni or in the workplace?
That's a difficult question. I'm not someone who tells stories very very naturally.
Doesn't need to be a story.
I suppose I remember when I was a young student, I went to Italy, to Milan. I wanted to go and see the work of the architect Aldo Rossi, and I came out of a underground station in a very desolate part of the city, in the city periphery, and had to climb a giant hill of construction soil in order to see around. And then in the distance I saw this building that I was looking for, and I went to see this housing project by Aldo Rossi, the Galleratesi housing project, which is a very primitive, basic and powerful piece of social housing in the outskirts of Milan. And I spent some time just walking around the spaces of that housing project. It was a sunny day, and I just thought it was incredibly beautiful just to be there in the spaces that were made by this architect.
Yeah.
And it was a sort of moment of revelation about how important, how special architecture is, the kind of intimate feeling that the architect has with space and light and atmosphere that I think has affected me throughout my whole career, and that there are architects have to answer lots and lots of questions, important questions and less important questions in society. But fundamentally, I really like thinking about what buildings feel like and the atmosphere of buildings, and it's nothing to do with the site, it's nothing to do with the program, it's to do with the presence of the building. Yeah.
Okay, well that was a very good story. So finally, and it might be the same answer or not, but if you could, a student of architecture might go on a grand tour around the world. If you could recommend a city and a building that a student would go on to as a stop on this grand tour, what would it be?
There are so many different places that I like, but I once went to the west coast of America, and I went to the desert, to Phoenix in Arizona, and I went to visit Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin West, which was this architecture school that he set up in the desert, where he went out into the desert with a group of students and asked them to build temporary structures, and then they gradually turned them into an architecture school, and they sort of built the building up out of the materials and place that they found in the desert, and that's an amazing place to go.
Okay.
The new world.
We'll take that as a recommendation. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you everyone for listening. That was a very special guest, so thank you for coming all the way up to Aberdeen, and I hope you enjoy your time in the city and your trip back as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.